Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here. It's an honor to share my story and my district's journey as we have worked to become a more equitable school district. Our world, as you know, is increasingly interconnected, interdependent, and filled with people from diverse backgrounds and varied perspectives. And our success as educators depends upon our ability to authentically recognize each student's humanity, honor their history and culture, and respect their differences. And since 2012, I've had the honor and the pleasure of serving as the superintendent of the North Clackamas School District. And in our care are over 17,000 students in 30 schools. And while we've accomplished quite a bit and had a lot of success, including increasing our graduation rate by 17% in the last 5 years and virtually closing the graduation gap for most of our student groups, I'm particularly proud of the work that we've done to create a more equitable school system and begin to create inclusive learning environments for each of our students. And AVID has played a significant role in our success. As I stand before you today, I would never claim that I have all the answers to the complex challenges that are faced by our school systems that leave far too many of our students feeling hurt, feeling disrespected, and discouraged in their educational experiences. But what I can tell you is that I am committed to learning, and I'm driven to take action to create a more equitable school system for each of our students. Because until we address the inequitable barriers that exist for far too many of our students, we will not achieve the academic success that we aspire for our nation's students. So equity is not about treating everyone the same. That is equality. Equity has us look at each student as an individual, affirming their identity, and building upon the gifts and strengths that each of our students possess. And bringing equity into our schools and our workplaces requires that each of us take a look at our own identity and our own history. So perhaps sharing a little bit about my background and my story will help you understand why issues of equity and inclusion are central to me. I grew up in a small town on the Oregon coast in a family of educators. My great-great-great-grandfather came to Oregon in the 1840s on the Oregon Trail. And he had a son who became a teacher who was certified to teach all subjects in the Oregon territories. My grandfather was a high school assistant principal, and my father was my high school counselor. I was raised middle class with the privilege that comes from being male, being white, and being the son of well-educated parents. And I knew the dominant community operating norms, and I used them to my advantage. And unlike many students in our communities today, college was always an option for me. And obviously, like others in my family, I fell into the family business. 18 months into my teaching career, at what is now the young age of 22, I was approached by my white male assistant principal and told that I should consider a career in school leadership. I was flattered because he told me that I had the characteristics of being a good school leader. As I reflect upon that conversation now, I realize that encouragement was also based upon the fact that I matched the characteristics of the typical school leader at that time. I was white, I was male, I was familiar, and I was probably comfortable. We need to begin to unpack our own racial identity through a lens of equity. This allows us to examine our experiences and our beliefs and our attitudes in relation to those with whom we teach, work, and live. Conforming to majority standards and customs that are not your own has a detrimental impact on too many of our students, our friends, our family members, our neighbors, and our colleagues. Recently, I had the opportunity to meet with a group of Black and African American students to hear their experiences of being a student in my school district. And what I heard was raw emotion, pain, and hurt in those conversations. Our students said that the only curriculum about Black people is when we teach about slavery. And instead, our students said they need to hear about the contributions Blacks have made throughout history, and they need to see themselves positively reflected in the curriculum. One student said, "We need to hear and learn about the Black experience from Black writers, not from a white person writing about the Black experience." Students went on to describe in vivid detail what it was like to be a student of color. A student said it's like air in a compressed can under tremendous pressure. Another student said, "I have to be careful around white people. They're afraid of me, the big, scary Black guy." And this was followed by another student who said, "It's hard going to school where people don't look like you. It's uncomfortable for everyone." And finally, as we wrapped up that conversation, a young woman looked at me in the face and she said, "You know, Mr. Utterback, I just keep my head down so I can graduate." I was left with the troubling reality. For all of our successes, our communities and our school systems continue perpetuating feelings of hurt and anger. And today, despite our best intentions, we still lead school systems where a student's gender, their skin color, their family's income level, and their home language predicts who graduates and who doesn't graduate from our school systems. Compounding that is more recently concerns around immigration and deportation have surfaced as major worries for many of our students and families. We have students who worry about being deported. We have students who fear their parents or their family members will be deported. And many of these families are afraid to come to school, as we've seen participation and engagement drop among many of these students and families. In addition, we've witnessed increases in racial, religious, and ethnic tensions and harassment and discrimination throughout our nation's communities. We have students that are entering our schools today under a cloud of fear and vulnerability. They're confused. And this daily hurtful rhetoric in our country and across our communities has the potential of producing alarming levels of anxiety in our children of color and inflaming both gender, racial, religious, and ethnic tensions in our classrooms. And this tension is tremendous and profound, and all students, regardless of whether or not they're members of targeted groups, are vulnerable to the stress. And we know what stress can do on behavior and academics. And our work has taken on even a greater importance as federal policies have been in flux and human rights have increasingly been called into question in our country. Our students and families are counting on us to be a reliable and trustworthy force in their lives and in their communities. And sadly, too many of our students and people in general feel that the system works against them and that they lack the power to bring about meaningful change. And our students need and want allies who possess that positional power and have the ability to bring about that meaningful change. And you and I are those allies. Our work and our why must be focused on the development of the human being. I'll say that again. Our work and our why must be focused on the development of the human being. Because it's about ensuring that when students leave us, they have the opportunity for social uplift. It's about giving our students a voice in this world, and it's about them being empowered to claim their humanity. I cannot think of more purposeful and meaningful work. And our students count on us to put in place the conditions for that to happen. I know it seems overwhelming to counter our current climate where the rules of civility and respect for differing opinions has dramatically dissipated. And I know that days I'm uncertain about the future. I'm discouraged depending upon the day or the crisis. And sometimes I find myself living in a state of disequilibrium because of the unpredictability of day-to-day events. And I'm surprised and I'm shocked by the actions and responses that are happening in our country. And I'm not even a member of a targeted group. So how do we begin to unpack the dominant norms and systems and attitudes that leave far too many in our schools and community feeling vulnerable and fearful to simply live life authentically? Our work is seeking answers and actions to that question. There is hope, and there's plenty of hope that's in this room. How do we counter we can counter these trends by creating classrooms where each student's history and culture is honored. Places where teachers and school leaders truly know their students on a personal level. Our schools must be places where the unique interests and talents and gifts of each of our students are cultivated and affirmed. Our differences must be celebrated in our classrooms and in our hallways and in the daily practice of the school day. We should see that when we walk into our schools and classrooms, our students' faces, their voices, and their families are front and center, as they are the fabric of our learning environment. We must learn who our students are and focus on where they want to go. We need to create time to listen to our students, to learn both their hopes and their fears. We must talk about race and the building of a student's racial identity. When we do this, we develop relationships with our students, and we recognize that the differences that exist in our student body. Earlier, I spoke that we must build our own racial identity so that we can interface with our students without shutting down student voice or personal growth. And we've used Avid's culturally relevant teaching practices to assist educators, leaders, and school staff to self-examine and address issues of race, class, gender, sexual orientation, and accountability through a growth mindset. And one of the more powerful actions that we can take is to teach our students to engage in respectful conversations. This is the foundation of civil discourse. When we allow our students to listen to one another, and when we create space for multiple perspectives and diverse perspectives on various issues, we will develop competent and critical thinkers. These critical conversations must be built on safe classroom environments where students' voices are cultivated and developed. And using tools like Socratic seminars and philosophical chairs allows that to happen. Taking these actions has a cumulative effect that creates a culture of safety and success. And when we repeat these actions, we build momentum. And when we build momentum, we positively change the trajectory for each of our students. And Avid gives students purpose, hope, and a sense that the once impossible dream of college and career is now possible. Recently, I wrote to each staff member in my school district. And in that letter, I spoke on the importance that each of us maintain and ensure a sense of learning and a work environment that holds at its center a sense of sincere caring, safety, and respect. And in that letter, I called on each member of our school district to take action and to stand together behind our district's equity policy and equity lens. And I spoke on the importance of reflecting on our practices, our behaviors, and our actions. Because when we do this, it allows us to examine the impact that our actions have on others. And it allows us to consider, are we moving toward a greater stance of inclusion as opposed to inadvertently excluding others? And I know that in our fast-paced society and world of work, going about business as usual can be as much of a habit as a strategy to get through all the tasks at hand. But in that letter, I offered a handful of strategies that further build in our schools and classrooms an environment of care, safety, and respect. I'm going to share some of those with you this afternoon. First, we must pronounce every student and staff member's full name correctly. No one should feel the need to change or shorten her or his name to make it easier for the adults and students to pronounce. You must engage in self-reflection to explore how your own identity and your own identity development impacts the way you see and experience other people. You need to grow and to learn and to change at the same rate the world around you is changing. By doing so, you won't lose touch with the lives and context of your students. Continue to educate yourself to learn from the experiences of your students and their parents, and to be challenged by a diversity of perspectives. You need to invite critique from students and fellow staff members, and be dedicated to actively listening and modeling a willingness to be changed by their presence to the same extent that they are necessarily changed by you. Our students and our families, rich and diverse in cultures and languages and experiences, are at the heart of our school districts and our classrooms. And you, along with your colleagues, are the people who care for and tend to the heart of our school districts and our classrooms. Our work is about supporting the safety and well-being of students, parents, and colleagues who are vulnerable. And we show that we care for our students and families through authentic engagement, love, and action. Because unlike tolerance, which would have us acknowledge our differences, love knows that each of us has worth and value, that each of us is entitled to feeling love and respected. Love has us defend each other from hurt and harm, and love requires that we lift each other up. Supporting students who are vulnerable means taking responsibility for what matters to you. And it also means leading with your heart. It means leading with love and with impact. Because everyone, no matter what we believe, where we were born, how we look, or whom we love, is entitled to move through this world feeling respected and safe. When we take action through a lens of equity, we will find ourselves leading classrooms and schools and school districts where a student's race, their gender, their skin color, their family's income level, their home language are no longer the predictor of who graduates and who doesn't graduate from our school systems. And when we take action and lead through a lens of equity, we will create school systems where each student has the ability to claim their humanity. Thank you. Have a great conference. And thank you for the work that you do on behalf of each of our students. Thank you.